you or Nilla?
All right, so we have 3 bills that we're taking up. 4 bills, actually, if we can move them out quickly. The first one, and I'm hoping Catherine can come up with, because I just want to have an opportunity to.
Catherine is on with us as well. Catherine,
She's up there.
yeah.
All right, and do we have a copy of the bill?
Which is the first one we're doing?
We're doing the liquor lottery.
Okay, is that 7:30? Okay, so let's start with this one note. 2, 3. And more of this, there is 7:30, 3. I'll get to see this one notes as well.
So we have Senator Brown Hinsdale here to present the bill on behalf of the Economic Development Committee. Do you want to join us? I see that this has probably come through finance because of the revenue impact that it had. So please now.
I'm printing out 2 more for you. I'll return it to you. Just one moment. Thank you. I'll be right with you.
So a lot of this is technical amendment. In terms of ready to drink, I know that's you spent a lot of time. The what we would want to look at, particularly if there is additional work associated, if there's an expenditure. And also, we've had some, we want to talk about section 42 that calls for studies and reports, because studies and reports, as you have indicated in past conversation, really require resources. And so we would want to take a look at that. So if you, I see they even have finally staggered license renewals. We talked about that for quite a while. So why don't you just do a quick run through of the bill itself, and then there are certain areas that we want to have more conversations.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Committee. I will be very brief, and I will probably rely quite a bit on our Legislative Council because I just learned I'm recording this bill a couple hours ago. And I too share your concern about studies, but I'll also do my best to represent the position of our committee as to why some of these components passed. So just starting from the top, the bulk of the bill, the biggest policy discussion we had was about ready to drink beverages. These are beverages that have less than 12%. I don't know if you would say hard alcohol content, or are made by spirits manufacturers and might constitute like a cocktail in a can. There are national producers of such ready-to-drink cocktails, but the bulk of our testimony was from local spirits producers like Smugs and other smaller producers that are starting to break into this market with with using a lot of local products to make a handcrafted Vermont branded ready-to-drink cocktail. It would not have more alcohol content than what's otherwise available in retail outlets grocery store outlets for sale. So the idea here, and it's kind of reflected in your fiscal note, is that this would create a new product helping local spirits industries that would now be available where beer and wine is sold. So going from access to about 80 state retail stores to 1,200 grocery stores.
Is it not true that the alcohol content would track exactly as spirits?
One could say that, exactly. Very, like low ABV cocktails, very measured, in some cases potentially more measured than if someone made their own cocktail, put it in a jar, and left their house. That, I would say, tracks with a majority of the bill. We added a section for the senator from Memorial on a definition around cider that allows different types of hard cider to be taxed differently and be defined finally in statute, which is overdue. And there was a late attempt to try and ask for, I think, so there's the ready to drink spirits beverage study. Did we take out, there was a privatization study still there?
Yeah.
Okay, so then there's a rather large in scope privatization study. And I would just characterize it as something that was written close to the end of our time in committee, and felt important to some on the committee as we look at moving spirits-based products into stores that sell beer and wine. That is a large study in scope, and I don't believe there was a separate appropriation need for that study. Tucker can probably tell you a lot of things that I missed that I can speak to as to our intent, but I am just living with this bill for
Did you say
first time.
the cider piece that they got added because there's an amendment from finance knocked out the cost that you see at 175,000. The finance committee's amendment will move that off to 24 instead of having an effect in 23.
Okay, so there is the hard cider policy actually does have a revenue impact and
At 175,000.
it reduces revenue.
But not in, it would not go in place until fiscal year.
24?
Yeah,
Well, that's good because that would mean we were out of balance.
right, that's why it was moved off to 20.
One of the things that we're concerned about is studies and reports and exactly the capacity we have and also what the cost is, should be, and the extent to which our legislative resources are being committed. And I know that there have been a couple of concerns expressed around the need for another study, since there was an extensive one done a number of years ago by the auditor's office. And then there's, I don't know if I can find it, but perhaps, and maybe that's why I asked if Catherine Benham, who heads up our joint fiscal office, could be present, because one of the things that I think we are very vigilant about is the work that we give our joint fiscal office and our ledge council over the summer. And so I know that we have a tendency to want to do more studies and restudy. And I just want to ask from your workload perspective, Catherine, I would appreciate your input, because my understanding is that in the testimony there was concern expressed about this this piece of work, the complexity, the cost. There's no appropriation to go with it. So if the intent was to have that workload all accommodated by your staff, I think that would be of particular concern to those of us who serve on the Joint Fiscal Committee as well. So if you could, please give us your honest assessment in terms of what you believe is the capacity to underwrite this work.
Thank you, Senator Kitchell. I think you summed it up well. There are, I'm concerned about how many studies we're doing, and this language does allow us to hire a consultant, but there's no appropriation with it. And it's not our area of expertise. So this would be a heavy lift for us to do at this time. And, you know, some of this work has been done in prior studies. I might also ask Graham if he wanted, who's also here as well, who's been working on this issue, if he has anything, Graham, that you wanted to add.
Thank you. For the record, Graham Campbell, Joint Fiscal Office. Yeah, I think Catherine touched upon it. I raised for the chair of the committee that the state auditor's office had done a study in 2014 of the considerations surrounding privatization of the liquor market. And I spoke to the auditor as the study was being considered in that committee, and he relayed to me that while it is, I guess now almost 8 years old, the findings in there are still relevant, and the considerations are still the same. And so, I sent that to the chair of the committee, just as a consideration that we can look into this area, but it's not exactly our area of expertise. And a study on the market and for privatization of the liquor market has been examined by another state entity not too long ago. And so I think that's the only other thing I would add to this discussion.
Senator Sears, you have your hand up.
It's not on this particular report. It's on a different issue on this bill.
Okay.
I did have.
Senator Burr.
I was on economic development when we did this study the last time. It was pretty comprehensive, and we had multiple visits from Pine State Beverage in Maine, who run a really big statewide operation, and they were looking to expand regionally. And so it was several months of study, and we ultimately came to the conclusion that it didn't make sense to privatize. So that just seems like deja vu to me. Then on the other study, ready to drink, if I'm reading the bill correctly, we're legalizing it, and then we'll take after it's legal, 18 months later, we'll report on various aspects of it. But a good part of that study seems like if we need that information, it should be done before we legalize. For instance, examining the impact of retail sale on the local beer industry. My position on the bill is I support it, but these studies are really hard for me to see how they're value added, I have to say. And I know sometimes it's horse trading on the committee, but for what it's worth, they just seem redundant or cart before horse.
And so that would be what got added in Senate Economic Development would be sections 42. The other ones, the 41, the staggered license, that was already in the bill as it came over from the other bodies. Yes, okay. So
why don't we're all three studies from our committee? My goodness. Yeah, I don't know. I didn't fully.
And all the studies are they all 42? I haven't really had a chance. They're all. So I guess the question for us is the extent to which the additional work and the studies that are being proposed that were not there in the House passed version are in light of the fact that there's not an appropriations, that we're getting testimony that the workload, that the fact that we have a member here was on economic development at the time in the past. That very issue was deliberated, and perhaps there aren't any current members.
No, I brought it up with them that because I was on the committee when the next year when Senator Ruth reported back to all of us and reminded. Well, I didn't remind them because the other three were not on the committee, right. And so it said we'd already done this. But yes, it was horse trading. That's exactly what's going on.
So if I may, so there are 4 studies in section 42, and I don't think it would be a mischaracterization of Commissioner Knight's position, but the first 3 are things she plans to do anyway, to come back with some update on the law that we passed, and also to look at 2 other issues that we are essentially delaying action on for yet another year, in terms of direct to consumer spirit shipping and fortified wine. She already is engaged in that work. She's bringing the spirits industry in to do a big review of all of the liquor sections. So whether or not the language is in there, I think that will happen, and I leave it up to you if you would rather not have language. And then that final study is squarely on the shoulders of our joint fiscal office and truly was a thought toward the end of our deliberation, about wanting to see this again in a new era, and that's about as much as I can just say in that section.
Next question about the bill in general. So, well, yes, go ahead, and then I want to come back to section 42, because we've got 3 more bills.
Mhm.
Okay, what amount of alcohol can be sold at the grocery store now? What amount? Oh, you mean for beer and wine? Yeah, what's the amount of alcohol, top line can be sold?
Beer and wine up to 16% alcohol by volume. If the retailer has a fortified wines permit, they can sell fortified wines which are up to 23% alcohol.
I see, okay, thank you.
But it's in 2 pieces. There's low and then there's high.
So my question is, obviously our concern is around cost or a study that we could contract for, but there's no money to go with it. And the fact that our testimony that we're receiving, there isn't a capacity to do it again, and it's redundant, and it doesn't seem to be anything that would indicate that the policy considerations and the findings would be substantially different from the last examination. So, committee, do you have thoughts about section 42?
I mean, the testimony we just heard is that very little would be hurt by not having it. So one possibility would be to strike the section. That's where I.
Okay, do we have a motion then to strike this?
I'll move to strike section 42.
Okay, so we have a motion to strike section 42 for all the reasons that we've talked about. That would make it quite easy to conclude. Then with that will be exactly what the House passed. It sounds as though.
No,
Is there a second to?
it wouldn't be exactly because they added site.
Oh, they added the cider. Okay.
Yep.
But the cider is still there.
Yep.
I need a second. Second by Senator. So we will have the clerk call the roll on the amendment to strike section 42.
Senator Ballard.
Yes.
Senator Bruce, yes. Senator Nick.
Yes.
Senator Sears.
Yes,
Senator Starr. Yes. Senator West.
Yes.
Senator Kitchen.
Yes. So Senator Sears, you had a question on another part of the bill.
well, it's actually something that's not in the bill. And that was at the time that we were doing the budget and we proposed putting in sports betting. Why was my understanding that they were going to put a study in one bill, which they did, and that they were going to put in sports betting legalization into the liquor lottery bill, which is this bill. And I don't see it there.
It's not there. You're right.
And have we given up on it for this year?
Well, I think perhaps you want to respond to that second. I think the general feedback that we've gotten from the other bodies, we can put it in and it's going nowhere, sort of a bit like the community high school of Vermont. And I think the Senate's very much on record that we view that as a revenue option that we should explore, and I guess we're going to continue pressing on it. But I think it was in light of the conversations with the other body that would hit a brick wall. But I don't think any of us have given up. We think that those revenues are flowing to all the other states. It's a bit like the marijuana discussion about which states are in first and which come in later on. And I don't see an issue going away, and I don't see that the need for the kind of regulatory protection that such legislation would provide would also go away. So I don't know, Senator Ballard, do you want to add to anything?
Just that our position has not changed, and unfortunately, the position of the House has not changed. And I have had personally numerous conversations with the speaker about the fact that the landscape has changed dramatically in the last few years. And it is my sincere hope that there will be change in the future. I think it is not to our benefit not to be getting this revenue, because it's already happening.
Money from Vermonters going out of the
I
state.
know.
Yes.
I know.
Yes. So you have a lot of support here. I'd say it's quite unanimous.
It is.
It is.
Disappointing. It's disappointing from my perspective, particularly, another event was missed on Saturday, the Kentucky Derby, where a lot of Vermonters place wagers, either out of state or online in some company in Nigeria or wherever. I have nothing against Nigeria, just that's where many of these companies are located. And that's disappointing. And that we go another year, you're going to probably force me to run again.
Oh, well.
Now, if the House had known that.
If the House had known that,
Yeah.
maybe. Well, I'm glad it has spurred you on. So now you know that it's something that we're not giving up on. It just was not gonna make it this particular session.
Move the bill is amended.
Okay, we have a motion to move the bill as amended. Seconded by Senator Starr.
Senator Ballard.
Yes.
Senator Booth, yes. Senator Nick.
Yes.
Senator Sears.
Yes.
Senator Starr. Yes. Senator Weston.
Yes.
Senator Kitchen.
Yes.
Okay, and reporter.
Okay, Senator Westman. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, so now we'll move on to you're here for notarial, is that right?
Yes, yeah.
Is Senator, or is Senator, White, I think it's the.
Do you want me to get it?
If you would,
Okay.
please, thank you. Is your order on this one? Rich.
Okay, this one is.
Mostly my bill.
Well, those studies I hope weren't.
No, the studies weren't. The two substantive pieces are mine.
There's the Senate version and the House passed underneath, because they didn't just strike all on that packet. All right, Senator Ruth, we given that to Senator Starr.
And how are you doing with the budget?
It's already been copied,
Oh,
so we'll be
really?
able to review it when we wrap up.
Yeah.
Oh, wonderful.
What's this?
This is, you did one of
Whatever
each?
you agree
One of
with
each?
the speaker
Thank you.
around the box or the childcare.
Would you pass on the balance?
About what the credit is and any spending.
That's for
And
you.
those things, she had 3 pieces.
Senator White, 2 copies.
Well, we need to make sure that Stephanie and Graham are very clear on what the $40 million box means.
Right, because she said the 40 million is just for tax. And any spending is in the Senate bill, was not included in each one.
And we've been assuming that if any appropriation that went in that bill got funded out of that bill.
And
Okay. Because there was the one-time payment for the childcare workers and there was the AABP increase. So if those are subject to conference, and if they can't accommodate it with the 40, then the question is, do any of them go? It's just part of the conference process as far
there's
as
3.5
I'm concerned.
million.
That's the way it was, that's the way it's constructed.
It's a childcare piece in scholarships.
So they can negotiate them down or away?
Well, Janet said that the 40 was only for the, and any spending was separate, and so the.
Well,
spending-
that's
but the
obviously not
offer-
Representative Hooper's understanding either, because we've been building the budget.
Without accommodating 4.2.
I'm just telling you what was articulated.
Hello, Senator. All right, so Senator White, we're here on a very fascinating bill.
Man, is it?
Yeah, and so we have it here because.
It creates a new position.
Is it-
I believe that's why. It creates a position within the archives that will be completely funded out of the Secretary of State's fund. It requires no general fund dollars at all, and it's
the goal is for that position to work with towns as they begin to standardize their land records, how they do both paper filing and electronic filing of land records.
And the underlying, the House bill included the position then?
Yes, and we have made just a small amendment that actually requires standards and best practices to be adopted before the towns can implement electronic land records.
So the reason we have it is because it creates a position,
That's
to
my
support the
understanding.
archival work, and, it's funded out of the budget, of Secretary of State, and we don't need an appropriation. But you do need the authority to create a position.
Yes,
So,
you do.
and we want to modernize land records, and I think the pandemic certainly brought home the need for that. So, discussion or motion to move the bill? Senator Starrs, move, the bill favorably as amended by Senator Boss.
Call the roll.
Please.
Senator Bell.
Yes.
Senator Ruth, yes. Senator Nitkin.
Yes.
Senator Sears.
Yes.
Senator Starr. Yes. Senator Westman, Senator Kitchen.
Yes.
Do we hold it open?
Yeah.
That was pretty painless.
And who does, Secretary of State? Is that you, Bobby?
I am not my
Senator Sears?
Okay.
I don't think Senator Sears does that. He does, protection. It isn't too complicated. No, it's not too complicated. Bobby, you can do it. Yeah, so Senator Starr has signed up.
Thank
I'm sure he put his hand up. I'm sure I thought.
I second you, Steve.
Okay.
Thank
Thank you. So our last bill in here is the miscellaneous tax.
738, and then if you wanted to do the 533, you get all.
All right, so Senator Sears, you said you were prepared to speak to 533, so maybe we should do that next.
533 is a bill that has to do with forfeiture of drug profits.
Oh my God, another working group and report?
Yep. But it's not it doesn't involve the legislative council. It's a working group to come up with some procedure back in
Yes.
the forfeiture laws, and since then, there have been very few forfeitures under state law. Most of them are done under federal law. And the proposed bill that passed the House would have made it a civil process. There was a lot of concern about that version. The Judiciary Committee worked diligently to try to come up with a new way to do it. We were unable to, and we settled on a report that was actually the suggestion of Sheriff Marcoux.
Okay, oh my goodness, the sheriff is there. And let me ask, are there per diems here?
Believe so. All of the people are,
Everybody's probably getting paid except for the Center for Justice Reform at Vermont Law.
well, I think they get paid too, but well, that might be a possibility.
I don't see, is there language here about reimbursement?
Nope.
I think they're just serving for the pleasure, for the benefit of the state.
Yep. That's the idea.
All right, so there's no, and everybody else certainly is getting compensated for their job. So,
I think the reason it came here was because there was in the original bill, there were a number of changes in forfeiture.
all right, so do I have a motion to move this bill as amended by Senator Fisher? Okay, Senator Starr and second by Senator Nitkin. And then,
Senator Bell.
Yes.
Senator Ruth, yes. Senator Nitkin.
yes.
Senator Sears. Senator yes.
Yes.
Senator Starr. Yes. Senator West. Yes. Senator Kitchen.
Yes.
Okay.
Now we're down to the miscellaneous.
I would report it, but I'm not there to hand the bill over to Senator Bloomer, so maybe if Senator Baruth.
Yeah, he did put his hand up, literally.
Oh,
I
okay.
didn't do it for him, he volunteered.
It was a put me in church.
Yeah. Okay, now we're down to miscellaneous tax.
And side by side. I still have waiting for the copy when you need to underline though, but here we go.
So, I don't know if we're gonna get to
Don't
go
need
through.
it.
I don't think we need the full load of hay on this one.
Okay, good. Thank you. Great, thank you, Senator.
So we will have. This one is gonna reduce revenues by 900,000.
No, it's right here, 23. Oh,
Sorry. Can we accommodate that, Stephanie? I'm sorry? This has a 900,000 impact on revenues.
I think that's incorrect.
Something, there was section 27.
Side by side.
Oh, it's less than 50, oh, but in 23. No, it says. It says 23, 900,000 and more.
Yeah.
Let's see if we can get Grant back on, just to understand that it's in the total target.
Okay. So there's Graham.
I think it is. I think that is in terms of it. Yeah.
So section 27.
I think so, in terms of accounting for any revenue losses in building the budget. I think that was one of them. That machinery and,
Machinery.
yeah. Oh my goodness, I thought we got rid of hunting and fishing licenses already from Native American groups.
So we did two last year,
Yeah,
or maybe no, it's not last year, but
it says section
years
15.
before that, maybe 2 years before the pandemic. They were all here.
It's right there. Well, what's the difference, free, permanent fishing, free of charge? Maybe fishing or hunting. Oh, because it includes trapping? Now they've added trapping licenses. Is someone texting Graham?
I sent him an email as well too.
And is Senator Cummings able to come in?
Oh, let me go grab her, see if I can. Excuse me, sir.
And then we're just gonna have to start reading the conference.
We do have to go through one section as a conference. You have to go through C102. We need to get the
That's their,
end of year.
So who is this involved for the main effect? What companies? What, for like IBM
I
or?
think it has to do with if you buy parts or something, and I'm not sure, Ann should be able to explain it. All right, Ann, we need a fast run through of 738.
Good, because
And
I just found out I was doing it before and I'm prepping. So this will be my trial run.
so I believe that in the spreadsheet in terms of tax impacts on revenues or tax changes, we had already accommodated that 900,000, that sales tax exemption for manufacturing inputs, that was on the list.
Yes.
Okay, so we've already reflected that.
And Joanne has started this as well.
Okay, so if you want to run through this very quickly, people are just wondering what is meant by manufacturing inputs.
Who's included?
As I understand it, right now, the law says to be tax exempt, the machinery and equipment has to actually touch or, handle the product. So it has to be
Oh
right
my
there.
goodness.
What's happening?
Premier Pro Tem.
I haven't had such service since Friday.
And the tax commissioner testified to us that the only time they find these is when they do an audit. Because as systems have become more automated, you don't buy separate pieces, you buy a unit, and it's not clear where one begins and the other ends. And they have lost their last two, I believe, cases because the judge said that a reasonable person could not figure this out. And the example was that you brewed beer in. And with that vat came this very complex thing that after you drained out the beer, this computer monitored thing goes in and cleans out the vat. Well, it didn't actually touch the beer, it just cleaned the vat. My example is if you go over the Granite Museum, there's all these saws and there's all kinds of stuff. And there's this giant sucky thing that takes all the white dust out, you know, and it's hanging right there.
Also, the vacuum system would count, but the saws
The other
do.
stuff that touches the granite
Senator
wood.
Starr, does that answer your question?
Not really, I just wanna get down who's getting the benefit.
The manufacturers are.
Yeah, but who's involved? Is it?
And it
IBM?
depends, anyone that makes anything. It is pretty broad, I mean, it's a
When you
man,
think of all the different pieces of equipment in manufacturing, the number of companies that would manufacture different pieces.
right,
So
and
why are we doing this? So if we,
Because we lost a case.
we've lost a couple cases and we're only finding the cases when we do an audit. And the judge has said a reasonable person would have a hard time figuring this out. You know, what does it mean to be an integral part of the manufacturing process? And as businesses become more efficient and more automated, then it gets more and more confusing.
So I'm sure you spent a lot of time, I know the House did,
The House spent a lot of time.
And the complexity of applying this policy and the fact that it's, you don't apply it until you audit and.
Yeah,
All right.
it's the, you know, we said just the basic complexity.
So,
Worth it.
the one thing, and we thought we had already taken care of the fishing and life. It looks like all we've done is add trapping in section 15.
We added trapping and it was, we were asked to do this to make it clear that it's not just the license, it's all the tags that go on the license. So it's not just a hunting license, it's the bear tag and the deer tag and the moose tag and
Got it.
it's all the tags that go, it's everything.
And then there's the 529 plans, the student repayment.
Yes.
I might say I really like that section.
Yeah, I wondered if you'd speak right up. That's on page 3. And,
That was a constituent request and we cleared it with DSAC and with Tom Little and made it very clear that this was only tuition to approve secondary schools. This is not the federal, you can take it out to send your kid to prep school or to religious nursery school. It is only.
Post-secondary.
It's all
Post-secondary.
post-secondary schools.
all right, so anything else? The reason that we got this is because are there positions being created? There's the revenue impact in terms of the
Yeah, I don't think we
900,000.
created any positions.
well, we should be able to get rid of one or two if we aren't gonna be collecting this money.
We probably get rid of a couple lawyers. But, on the broadband board's authority, that came up because the broadband says that in case CUD goes belly up, all its assets return to the state. Well, the CUDs are going to the bond market, and if the bond market is loaning them money, the bond market wants access to the assets if they go belly
They're
up.
being used as collateral.
Yeah, and so we worked, there was a concern though that people did not want this to go the way of Burlington Telecom and have a lot of public investment. And the treasurer had a lot of concerns, and basically what we came down with is we get annual reports, they get them more often in the board, that if anybody is in trouble, we have time to step in. And then I believe this reserves the right for us, you know, to take action at the time something goes wrong. But the plan is we're gonna have enough hands-on so that we're gonna have good warning if something's going to go on.
And what section is that?
50, nope, that's hunting and fishing. Where did I just see broadband?
Oh, it's coming back, yeah.
No, it's 19. It's right after,
The board shall require.
yeah.
I don't see that there's no appropriation, there's no positions being created. There is an impact on the revenues, which has already been accounted for in building our budget, so,
I'll
unless,
move the bill favorably.
okay, okay, fine. I know Senator Cummings has got plenty to do.
I hope this is an indicator of the reception.
I primed the conversation you're gonna have about what went on in the first conference.
Yeah, those appropriations have to be covered.
And they aren't in the budget?
No,
No,
Okay.
no, they're part of getting to that, if any appropriations, you still gotta have the 40 million.
And they want those out because they
Well, if
want
they
the
do,
40
if they want-
million to cover theirs. It was the news that we weren't allowed to have any sunsets that kind of threw us.
well, that and the sunset, because, and the way it was articulated, the deal would be cut between the two.
And we were told. So it was one of
No,
the
the-
more
the-
unpleasant committees.
So the appropriations are to be funded within.
That budget.
Within
Okay.
the budget,
Whether
same
it's
as your tax.
spending or whether it's
Well,
tax.
there's
Whether
a,
it's a tax expenditure or an appropriation.
okay,
So
that's what we didn't know.
And,
If it
and I will
worked
tell you
like
that
it-
Representative Cooper and I have been building the budget
Around
on
that.
that. And so
Okay.
there's no money in the budget to accommodate those appropriations now. You can
Well-
argue that we won't make them then. And
Okay.
that'll free it up to use toward tax
It is
expenditures.
still, what we were told is that appropriations were not allowed, and therefore we couldn't talk about them. That sunsets weren't allowed, we couldn't talk about them. And
There was one more piece.
one
but I-
more thing that we didn't know about. And
Well, I think you're
So-
probably gonna have to talk about them, and I don't know who's setting the rules.
well,
Well,
we were
it
told
was
it was an
articulated to
agreement
us.
with the
It
speaker
was-
and.
Yeah.
Okay. So we can go back in and tell them this was not an agreed thing.
So you may not be able to do the House can't do as much on their tax expenditures if they agree with any of the appropriations, or we would have to give on some of the
Right.
appropriations,
Well,
but
if
it's the same box.
We spent the 40 million, we did 4.5 of it in those appropriations. They want that 4.5, I think, to enhance their child tax
I
credit.
expect that's exactly what they want.
Yeah, and the way they articulated was the 40 million was only for tax credits. And
Yeah.
yet the spending in there with,
They're,
was
Yeah.
that,
Oh.
and that they They said that was the agreement.
Well, then they've got a major problem. They need to talk to their chair of appropriations. Because the budget would definitely not,
They just don't want us to appropriate, and it's long, I mean, it's just what's under discussion. We're gonna give somewhere, I'm pretty sure.
yeah, I'm sure, and maybe on both sides, on both the appropriations and stuff, but that is the position and that's the understanding.
Okay,
And
and that's part of that $40 million box, which is what we thought it was. Okay,
all right, thank you for coming in, Ann.
thank you.
So, is that the last of our bills?
That is it.
All right, so we have finished,
Who reports?
who's does tax?
General government person.
General governments.
I think I do.
All right, well, it's pretty easy. We're just concurring with the bill.
I
as
like the
amended.
bill a lot.
All right, well, I'm glad you do. Oh, because at 5:29?
We vote? No.
Okay, no, not yet. No, we haven't voted yet. So we have a motion to move the bill by Senator Westman, was it?
Yep.
And then seconded by Senator Brewer. And so we'll call the roll.
Senator Down.
Yeah.
Senator Ruth, yes. Senator Zika.
Yes.
Senator Sears.
Yes,
Senator Starr. Yeah. Senator Weston.
Yes.
Senator Kitchen.
Yes. Okay, we've moved out all the bills that we've been.
We're ablaze with 7-0.
All right, thank you. Now are we ready to actually go back to the committee conference then?
I believe we are.
So we'll log out of here.
Yeah, we will. I'm going to adjourn the committee, appropriations committee for today. We have finished all the bills that have been referred to us. And we're going back to the committee of conference on the 2023 budget.